What's up, my ninjas? I'm Strydent, and I am here with another video. We're getting back into some Joe talk. It's been a while. I picked up the rest of what was left for Retaliation, what I didn't have, which was, Lady J, um, Joe Colton, Alley Viper, the Cyber Ninja, and I think I picked up doubles of those guys just because I had something else in mind for them. And my wife and I found them at a grocery store for like $3 each. So I picked up like a bunch of, I think I picked up everything they had. Well, one of everything they had and two of some of the others. Anyway, those figures are crap. I mean, I'm sure you already know. I'm not really going to get into a full review, but I'm going to have, I'm going to give you an overview of those things that you don't already know. I mean, from, peg holes not fitting and you having to drill holes in them, and from them not being able to hold weapons right, but from certain figures being made in 2015 and not having the updated joints that we saw from the Pursuit of Cobra and 30th anniversary and so on and so forth. It's not worth what you were paying in the stores. But on a side note, some of the figures are a little bit better than the 50th anniversary figures. The paint is a little bit more consistent, the little bit of paint that we got. The sculpts, I never really have issues with Joe sculpts. I love their sculpts. It's just the stupid changes to articulation or the mixing and matching of articulation. It doesn't actually benefit the figures. Like the ankle rockers suck because your figures don't stand up properly. They all look pigeon-toed and it just doesn't work. So, you had a mix and match of that. And then a lot of the accessories just didn't make sense. Like the Cyber Ninja having the pistols from Helix, and then, the backpack from the Pursuit of Cobra, Firefly. It's just weird because it's like, what goes in there? Am I supposed to just throw the guns and the wench thing in there, for him to slide down the rope or whatever? I don't know. I think the swords and the scaling thing, those are cool. And the gun, he has Helix's gun also. It just felt like a lot of the figures were packaged with random shitloads of weaponry to appease those who want, they just want Joes, and who see, more shit in the package as, a plus. And meanwhile, your figure is lower quality. Like Joe Colton looks like the busted 50th clone of Homer Simpson and what's his name? Bruce Willis. Like, he doesn't quite look like Bruce Willis, but he looks more like Homer Simpson. Like, the cloning process has degraded over time or something. It's just not a good-looking figure. He doesn't look like anything that you saw him in the film. His hands are bulbous and weird, especially around the wrists. And, it's just strange to me because we have so many good examples of how Joe's sculpting on, musculature and on the hands and the weapons and the wrists and stuff can be done right with all the Pursuit of Cobra and 30th anniversary figures, with the exception of the hands on the Renegades Duke and Renegades, it might even be, I think it's just Renegades Duke and Law that have the big puffy, wrists or whatever. But, we've seen it done so right. And then you get to this, and it's done so wrong, and all the fans are just giving it a pass. And I understand, I recently had a little back and forth. It wasn't an argument. It was just stating, observation and perspective with a guy, I think it was Robo on the Whoosh. He did a review of the newer Marvel Legends stuff, and it was all lackluster. He was reviewing Sentry and Machine Man. Machine Man I actually want, because I love Machine Man from Next Wave. But the review just showed that, number one, it was a classic version of the character, which most people have never seen because he was an obscure character, which is why they used him in Next Wave in the first place. Sentry is on the Hyperion body, and they didn't do anything. They didn't re-engineer the figure. They didn't re-sculpt the chest. They didn't do anything. They gave him a cape that just plugs into his back that doesn't sit there properly. I mean, it was falling off during the review, And the whole time, Robo's like, yeah, I could fix that with this, and I can do this, and I can do that. And I'm like, you're reviewing a figure. You're not telling us what your battle plan is for this figure that you already paid money for. We want to know if the figure is worth the money. So in the comments, I just told them, I said, someone else completely just was roasting him. And I'm like, you know, there's always a bias I see with these guys when it comes to Marvel Legends, because, you know, the figure could be falling apart in a video, and because they customize, they'll be like, oh, it's cool. I see this same thing with Joe's a lot. A lot of people, because they customize, they don't see these things as issues. That you paid money for a figure and it fell apart in a fucking package, or it fell apart as soon as you opened it. And, you know, to me, that's not cool. I've told you my stance time and time again. I've been on YouTube for going on 4 years, and from day one, I've always said if the figure doesn't do what it was supposed to do when you open the package, it's a failure. And you paid good money for this figure to do what the company promises that it will do. So having exorbitant prices, you know, the prices going up ridiculously. And I'm going to get into this a little bit more because I have something else I want to talk to you guys about too that could compare with Joe's. But you pay more money, and a lot of collectors try to say, oh, it's it's inflation. You know, it's like, okay, whatever, dude. You pay more money and you get less figure. You get less everything. Meanwhile, you know, inflation occurs all over the world. It's not just an American, you know, a phenomenon. And meanwhile, you go all over the world. You go to other countries. We'll use Japan. I would use Spain, but I only know a handful of figures from Spain, and I don't think the majority of you guys know these figures. But we'll use Japan because everybody knows Japan. Everybody has some kind of, you know, involvement with action figures from Japan in the figure collecting community, you know. Japan, you know, every figure that comes out is between $10 and $25 domestically. You know what I'm saying? Like just about all the figures in the 6-inch scale for the most part are about that much. You know, I would go up to 30 maybe, you know, to push it a little bit. But if you're in Japan, that's about what you're paying for a lot of these figures. And sometimes you're paying a lot less. But over here in the US, we don't even get a third of what comes in the box with those figures that they get for domestically, of very simplistically designed characters, mind you. Over here, we have very simplistically designed characters, so much so that the companies go out of their way to give you the classic versions so that they don't have to sculpt as much and they don't have to tool. It just doesn't have to be as complicated. It's just a paint job. And they still raise the price. I mean, Marvel Legends went from being like $7 or $8 to being $24.99. And now they have gummy joints. Some of them came with one accessory, like freaking Gamora. And then they come with the pieces to build a figure, and folks are cool with this. You know, it's just stupid. And like I said, I don't subscribe to it anymore. So you know, there's just no room for us to be getting such shitty figures, and then you know people are taking it lying down, you know, or bending over, or however you want to look at it. And then you know, for people to get mad, it's just like, don't get mad at me. You paid over $100 for a wave of figures that were subpar, or that maybe 2 or 3 of the 6 figures in the line are actually worth it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't get bamboozled, you did. So, you know, those Joes are just not. Retaliation was almost a complete failure if it weren't for the few that I've pointed out that were like really well done. You know, the Combat Ninja, the Joe Trooper. The Alley Viper figure actually is not bad because it's a body that was, you know, very simple, and it did some of the things that it needs to do to you know, be a worthwhile figure. I mean, if you're paying attention, you realize that it's the Flint and the Duke body from Wave 1. Well, Flint, I think, was Wave 2. Duke was Wave 1. But, you know, there's a handful of figures in Retaliation that were actually worth a damn, you know. A lot of them, they were dressed up nicely and poorly executed. The materials were horrible. The engineering was just beyond subpar, you know, for figures coming from a company that did such amazing shit with the 30th and the Pursuit of Cobra and the 50th anniversary. So, you know, I don't understand what's going on there. You guys should be aware of this shit, and I know many of you are. I hope when I'm pointing this stuff out, you guys understand. I'm pointing it out because what I go into the store hoping for is that I get more Pursuit of Cobra quality. When I open the package and the figure is just like, suffering from gummy joint syndrome, I'm not happy because that's not what I pay for. That's not what Joes are supposed to be. Joes, I mean, many of us have collections of Joes that span several, generations of the brand. I have some 12-inch Joes from the 90s, and they're still in great condition, and I'm keeping them in a fairly hot place. I mean, now it's not so hot because it's winter time, but my studio is up in the attic, so I have to make sure everything's ventilated very nicely, in the summertime, and I have to keep the AC running up here to make sure my toys don't melt. You know what I mean? Because it gets hot up here. And still, they all, stand the test of time. None of them are just melting. None of them are falling apart. Some of the little rubber band things I use to hold pieces on when I tuck them away, some of those things fall apart. But overall, I'm not having any issues. So I don't understand why nowadays they're going to go so cheap with some of this stuff. It just doesn't make sense. Now, on the flip side, my little Strydent, we have been collecting shitloads of Imaginext stuff for him. Imaginext is made by Mattel. They're pretty awesome figures with a lot of cool licenses and a lot of nods to collectors. You know what I'm saying? Like the people making this were collecting figures in the 80s, and they make figures and lines within the Imaginext brand that are a throwback to older lines. Case in point, Dino Riders. A lot of us collected Dino Riders when we were kids. They were tiny little figures that had in some cases, motorized dinosaurs with these cool armor pieces on them. I think the leader of the bad guys was on a T-Rex, while the leader of the good guys was on a giant Brachio or Brontosaurus or something in that family. I can't remember. I only had... did I have one? I think I had one. I had the Triceratops, and that's it. Because around my way, we never saw them in the store. We only saw them in catalogs and stuff, the JCPenney catalog and whatnot. So down the road, I was thinking of going back and collecting them, and then my son is always pointing them out when we go to the store, and my older son was, and we started collecting these things for the baby because we knew we had the baby on the way. My younger Strydent, just turned 2, and we're having a party for him this weekend. We came across the find of the freaking century. Up until this point, we'd been collecting Justice League stuff, a lot of Knights and Pirates, and the city and space, small sets. So we have a space shuttle for him. We've got the Batcave, the Batmobile, the Batwing, Batman, Robin, Catwoman, just all the stuff that I have up in my studio in DCUC and DC Direct and whatever, and even the Marvel characters, because I think Play School does the Marvel characters. I could be wrong, but we started collecting all those different things, and he has a nice collection now. Anyway, the other day, it was just 2 days ago, my wife came across a post in one of her Facebook groups where somebody was selling the Imaginext Battle Rover, which is this ginormous, it looks like a trike that a kid could sit on and ride, but it's an actual vehicle that can house all these different space-oriented Imaginext figures, and it comes with a lift with a spaceship on it that you can launch off that has its own lights and sounds, and it interacts with the base electronically. I mean, it's freaking awesome. It's like the shit we used to get from G.I. Joe when we were kids. I want to say the trike itself is 3 feet, maybe 3.5 feet long, and it's about 2 feet wide, and you could house 20 or 30 Imaginext figures on there if you want. In the back, there's a little bucket where you just pour your Imaginext figures and gear in the back. There's a lift that's motorized. There's 3 buttons you can press to activate all the different modes, and the lights along the edges of the thing do all kinds of stuff. I mean, it's the kind of shit that we got when we were kids. It retailed for $119 when it first came out. We managed to get it for $45. So I jumped on it, of course, because $45 for something that I think now it's about 69 at Target. You'll see it if you go to Target, it's usually on the bottom shelf next to that motorized Batman robot monstrosity thing that he has. It's like a robo tank thing that's motorized, and you press it and it stands up, and if you press it again, it actually, transforms into like a tank. It's usually next to there with a huge box that looks like a child could hide inside of it. It's by far the biggest vehicle I've seen in years for smaller figures. So, 119 at release. I've seen it during the week that it came out. I saw it go from 119 to 150 and then back down to like, one something, and then 98, and then, 70, and then 69. I think right now it's like 60 something in that range at Target. But it keeps fluctuating. My point is this, though. I'm going to do a video review where I show you this thing in detail and show you all the little things it does. It comes with 3 guys. It comes with a smaller ship that you can, release and play with and fly around and do cool stuff with. And it costs $119 at release. It's not tied to any other license or anything like that, but $119, and it's way bigger than the what was it called? The G.I. Joe. I call it the Rock, but when it was released, it was called the Pit, the mobile pit from the movie. It's bigger than the Defiant. It's bigger than freaking Cobra Island. It's bigger than or the Terradrome. I'm sorry. It's bigger. It's not bigger than the only vehicle I can think of that's not bigger than right off the bat is it's definitely not bigger than the Flag, but it's bigger than the Rolling Thunder. It's bigger than almost all the vehicles I've seen for G.I. Joe, and if it's not the biggest, it's about as big as the biggest vehicle under the Flag. You know what I'm saying? So the Flag would be the largest. Whatever's the next biggest thing, it's either close to that size, if not bigger than that. And it costs $119. Lights, sounds, all kinds of little play features. The extra ship, 3 figures come with it, and meanwhile, the collectors clubs and all that shit. And I understand they have all these fees and they have all these other things that they need to cover, but realistically, there's no reason why we can't get vehicles and such for G.I. Joe of the size that we're getting for Imaginext. I mean, like, I've bought my son all kinds of stuff for his Imaginext, especially for like Batman and stuff for his samurais and his knights and all kinds of things. Although I haven't given him the knights and samurai stuff because they all come with really tiny parts. I mean, he's smart enough though right now that he can play with my toys, which is crazy. But I figured let me get him stuff that's small for his hands, But all that stuff, I'm looking at it and I'm like, damn, some of this shit is cooler than the shit I have. I mean, the sound is so clear. And the sad part is that, Hasbro and Mattel, they've been, competitors for a very long time. So a lot of times one will make something and then the other one will make something to kind of rival their creation. When I listen to the sounds on a lot of my Joe stuff and then I listen to the sounds on the Imaginext stuff, are you kidding me? It's like no comparison. The Imaginext stuff has way better sounds, and like they have ambient sounds. They have timers where like if you press the button right now, it does something. Then it'll stay on for a few minutes later, and then you'll hear it do something else later on. There's a lot of electronics that interact with each other. So if you have a base and it has sounds, and you have a ship that goes to that collection, and you can house it in that base, when you press the buttons on the ship, it will interact with the base. Or like, there's a castle dragon with a wizard, and if you press the dragon's wings, the flapping sounds and stuff and the screaming for the dragon come from the base. And all you have to be is within, I think, 4 feet of the actual, wizard tower. It's stuff that I'm saying to myself, okay, Joe's and Imaginext are pretty close. I mean, I know the Imaginext are shorter, but the Joes are only a couple inches taller, Well, why is it that we can't get this stuff for the Joes? Why is it that because it's G.I. Joe, G.I. Joe doesn't have the kind of clout that it had back in the day? They could easily just downgrade or upgrade to what Imaginext is and do that with the Joes. Keep the figures, you know, find a sweet spot for the figures. You know, maybe the design, the men have one type, you know, two types of bodies, and the ladies have two types of bodies, and the villains have two, you know what I'm saying? Like, scale down, but then change up all the gear and change up the gimmicks for each of the characters and the vehicles and all that stuff. And just make the vehicles that interesting so that we want to actually play with it, and our kids want to play with them, and we can get them on it young, and they can keep on playing and playing and going with this as they get older. And then, you know, they'll see what the value is in having all these sets that work together and have all these characters that fit perfectly with, you know, the whole line. And it just seems like a non-issue when you look at it from, you know, when you compare it to other, you know, collections, you know, like the Justice League. They made they have a Justice League in Imaginext, and the Justice League has a javelin. Javelin, for those of you who don't know, in the cartoon, the javelins, and I'm pretty sure they're in the comics too. I just know different artists always draw them differently, but in the cartoon, there was spaceships that the Justice League used for transport from the Watchtower. And so they made one. It fits all 7 Justice League members. Well, you know, the big 7, the main 7. So it can fit 7. It has lights, sounds, it fires things, and it has ambient sounds so that once you get into space, it has that, like, the what is it, taxiing sound. It's like bleep, bleep. That nice, soft, echoey, you know, taxiing sound. Once they're in space, they're in deep space, just so you can tell that they're traveling. And I'm saying to myself, when I first saw this thing, I was like, yo, I'm going to buy 2 of them, one for my son and one for myself. We recently got one for like $8 off of Toys R Us, Target.com, because they're clearing out a lot of old stuff, because this came out a couple years back. I just don't understand how they're making these things. And I know for your you know, your DC characters, a lot of them are 7 inches or 4 inches, so it's like, you know, you may not be able to fit a whole bunch of them into that if you were to use it, but I'm sure someone could customize the cockpit to fit like 4 of the 7, you know what I'm saying? Or, you know, something like that. But the point of the matter is just that, how is it that with these preschool age toys, they're able to pull off these things that us dorks that collected figures in the past, we're aware of it, you know what I'm saying? How are they able to pull those things off accurately? And we can't get that in the lines that have survived our childhood to now, based on our strength. It doesn't make sense. And, you know, you have a lot of people who are collectors, but they're just consumers. They're just blind consumers. They don't understand how the stuff works, and they come up with some really amazing excuses for why things are the way they are, but they never ever stop and say, I'm not going to buy this because it's like this. They always buy, and they always buy, and you don't realize that the reason why shit's not getting better is because you always buy. You know, I've said it time and time again, and other people have said it too. Shit, Angry Joe always says it. You vote with your wallet. If they do some shit you don't like, you stop buying. And it's very simple, you know? Instead of buying up everything that has the G.I. Joe name on it, there should be a period where we're like, no. Like, a lot of us don't want 6-inch G.I. Joes. I don't want 6-inch G.I. Joes. I have hundreds of 3 3/4-inch Joes, and I have vehicles to go with them. I want more of that, because that's what I've been collecting. That's what G.I. Joe is. It's one of the more recognizable things or parts of G.I. Joe. I mean, I know they were 12 inches at first, but I don't have the money these days to keep up with the 12-inch, you know, whatever, because they're just getting too expensive, and the quality, some of it is higher up, but most of it is the same, and I'm just like, you know, and there's so many 12-inch, you know, companies. Why am I going to really settle on Hasbro when I could go get Triad toys? I love Triad toys. A lot of people don't talk about them. I don't know what's hot, considering, I mean, people talk about Hot Toys these days, but Hot Toys to me was always like not as amazing as Triad or not as amazing as BBI in some cases, but in some cases they're better. It just depends on what the franchise is. But there's so many companies that produce 12-inch figures. I wouldn't stick with Hasbro. You know what I'm saying? But 3 3/4 inch figures, I don't know. You know, Hasbro has always made the best ones. And for times to be changing so drastically where I'm looking at Hasbro and I'm saying, wow, this shit this year or last year sucks in comparison to the shit they gave us 2 years before. And now, you know, they're telling us they're going to go to a different format. If you couldn't get 3 3/4 inches right, what's to make me believe that you actually can do amazing things with 6 inches? You know, it's kind of weird. And then, like, you know, when I look at the Star Wars Black series versus the Marvel Legends, Star Wars Black has paint variation and, you know, some soft goods for certain parts. And you look at Marvel Legends, it's still shitty plastic figures that don't necessarily look the part. I mean, some of them really look the part, you know, like this new Black Widow, I always say that. The new Scarlet Witch. The movie figures for the Avengers, they're pretty good. They all look the part. I like them. Typically, I really do like Hasbro's movie figures. The new Captain Marvel. I really dig her design. I dig the way the figure looks. Even King Thor. I'm kind of torn between if I should buy it or not, but I like how it looks. I just don't know if I'm going to pick it up, you know? It's just one of those things. I see how they handle one aspect of action figures and how they treat collectors over here, and I just can't imagine that when you move over here, we're going to get the same quality. And then when I see this area here, you know, these two get shit quality, and then this one gets a lot of quality, and then this one, it's like, really? Star Wars gets top billing because it's Star Wars. But, like, G.I. Joe has been suffering for the last, you know, 10 years. Are they really going to make these Joes better than the other ones at the smaller scale for the lower price point with the, you know, simpler process? I mean, they're bigger. I mean, I'm assuming it's going to be more plastic, which means they're going to charge you $20 a pop. And it's not going to be long before that $20 becomes $24.99, and then they go to 30, and the characters are still at the same level of quality that they were when we started collecting this 6-inch line. So I'm not really psyched about the 6-inch line. I mean, it's nice that Joe's not dead, but, like, are you going to get any vehicles for those 6-inch figures? I'm pretty sure you all know the answer to that. You'll probably get a motorcycle, maybe a quad runner of some sort, like the Ferret or whatever. But you won't get anything bigger than that. And then if you do, they're going to charge you like $500 for it. And it's going to be some online exclusive or something. When you move over to Imaginext and they're doing shit amazingly in 3 3/4 inches. Or smaller than 3 3/4 scale. And it's weird for me. What is that? 1/18 scale. I'm going to start doing some reviews about standout Imaginext figures. There's a handful of them that I really like, and some people have pointed them out when they were looking, they're seeing them in the background. Like, I had King Leonidas up on a stack of containers in my backdrop for my reviews. I'm going to review him. I'm going to review the Skull Knight that goes with him or goes against him. These are all things, like I said, I picked them up because I thought they were cool, but I'm saving them so that my son, when he gets a little bit older, he can appreciate them too. So I'm gonna go in with these reviews. I mean, I'm gonna try first. I'm gonna start big with the Battle Rover, and then we're gonna move on from there. I'm gonna do the Justice League because we have so much of the Justice League. I mean, they even made a Deathstroke versus Nightwing 2-pack, which means they've been watching the internet TV show, or they've been reading specific comics where these things happened. And if they're fans like that, that's why this is so imaginative. I mean, my wife and I geek out when we see these things in the store because they're really clever with what they choose to focus on. You know, like gimmicks and vehicles and the effects that go with them are so, like, subtle. And it's like the old cartoons that we used to watch where, it's got the lights and sounds and colors for the kids, but then there's little jokey things in there for the adults that will be playing with their kids when they buy this stuff, you know? Like the Battle Rover has this voice, this computer voice that pops on when you do different things. If you leave it for a while, you'll hear it say, "Houston, are you there?" Or like if you press the alarm too many times, it'll be like, "All right, enough with the alarm already." And it's a computer voice. It's supposed to be it's the computer voice that says raise shields, shields activated, blah 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 blah. It's real robotic sounding, but it does all that other stuff. And my wife and I are cracking up like, wait, what? It just said what? So, you know, I'm gonna do a review about that, and I'm gonna start showing you guys like we really don't have to be settling for what we've been settling for. You know, there are other figures from other lines and other vehicles from other lines by some of the same companies that are giving us shit in this area, this one area, that are quality. You know, there are vehicles from Imaginext that are exactly the same size, same weight, and everything as G.I. Joe vehicles, but they have lights and sound and everything, and they cost a fraction of what the Joe vehicle costs. I mean, I've even shown you with the core. The core have vehicles the same size as Joe vehicles, but they also have lights and sounds that work. You know what I mean? Like it's not expensive. The batteries are already in it when you buy it, and it costs like less than half of the price of a Joe vehicle that you have to put together, that you have to put all the stickers on, and you have to buy batteries for it if it has electronics in it. And theirs comes with the figure, the Joe one doesn't, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, why does anyone settle for this? I don't understand. You know what I'm saying? Granted, you know, it's kind of like buying knockoffs of stuff, but like in this case, the quality is better for this, you know, thing over here versus what you've come to expect from the Joes. So it's like, do you continue getting G.I. Joe stuff when the quality of G.I. Joe goes down the shitter? Or do you just move on to the next thing that's comparable and, you know, start, you know, substituting? I mean, I started substituting a long time ago because a lot of what I wanted at the time was so expensive, and I was like, yeah, I'm not going to break the bank, and I'm only collecting because I wanted something to do with my stepson. And then as we got into it more, I started finding deals everywhere, and I'm like, shit, okay, now I can get all these things because I'm finding the deals. I didn't know, you know, what to expect, so I kind of went into it with trepidation, but now I feel, I mean, I know where to look. I know you know, where to find the things I want to find, and I know if I wait, I can find these things for cheap. So I don't know. Hopefully you guys get this from these talks and these videos where I point these things out. And I don't know. That's it for this little, you know, this 30-minute. Hopefully it was some information that I was imparting on you guys, but I'm going to do reviews, like I said, and show you more of this stuff. And hopefully it'll be, you know, something you guys can look to, because I know a lot of you have kids, because a lot of you are grown, and a lot of you may know kids that could benefit from some of this stuff, and it'd be a nice change of pace from these super tough, you know, excuse me, these grown-up, you know, military hoorah nonsense that we're stuck with when it comes to the Joes. You'll see that same level of thought and same level of appreciation that went into creating the Joe stuff that we love, and you'll see it here with these kids' toys. And it's kind of like, wow, why can't these guys work on G.I. Joe and then have the G.I. Joe guys that were working there work on something else? Because obviously they've ran their course. They don't know what else to do. You need new blood. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, I'm Strydent. This has been my rant. This is my story, and I'm sticking to it. None of this is going to change. You know what I'm saying? I keep seeing more that reaffirms my beliefs and you know, my thought process on this. And, you know, we're not getting younger. We're getting older. And these lines that we love are disappearing because of these things that I'm pointing out. And there needs to be some kind of, at least put it out there so some one of these guys could stumble across these videos and be like, hey, maybe that makes sense. Let's try this, you know? Or maybe this could spark some other people to start some petitions and send that shit and bombard Hasbro and say, look, this is what you need to do. You know? You never know. I think it would work. But anyway, I'm Strydent. That's it for me. You've been great. Peace outside.